If it okay, it works.
Working. Ooh.
Welcome, everyone. I think we can slowly start. Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted that this is, I think, the only full in-person session, that all the speakers are here. I'm very happy about that. So let me first introduce myself. I'm Hanna Keller, expert at the International Cooperation Bureau at the Polish Competition Authority. So the Polish NCA is one of the co-chairs of the Advocacy Working Group, together with Singapore, Japan, and Egypt. And it's an honor for me to moderate this session. So I'm delighted to introduce our speakers. So I will start with Mr. Jakob Maniukan, the head of Policy Development and Methodology Division in the CCPC Armenia. I would like to thank you for hosting this workshop in such a nice way. It's great to be here. Michele, you are here, Michele Paccio. Do I pronounce it correctly? Yes. Okay. International Affairs Senior Officer at the Italian Competition Authority. Michele is doing a great job as the ICN Secretariat, so thank you also for that. And Dr. Christoph Fritsch, Deputy Head at the Merger Policy Department in Bundeskartellamt. So moving now to the topic of our session. I don't know, is the session live streamed or is there a live stream of this session? Sorry? YouTube, okay. So this session will explore how competition advocacy can help address the unique challenges of digital markets and how agencies can effectively design and tailor their advocacy efforts in this context. So it will consist of three parts. First, we will focus on the general characteristics of digital markets and identify the challenges that are related to them. And then we will focus on how we can reach out to the public, so how we can effectively design advocacy. And finally, I would like to open the floor for discussion so everyone can share their views. So, as we all know, digital markets present complex issues for competition authorities. So it would be useful first to highlight the context and the recent developments and the key challenges in this area. So, Jakob, I will start with you. So to kick off the conversation, I would like to hear how, in your view, the digital transformation is affecting the work of competition authorities. I give the floor to you.
Thank you, first of all, now as a speaker, not moderator. Let's start from welcoming you in Yerevan. It's a great honor and great joy to see you in Yerevan in person in such a difficult geopolitical period. So, coming to your question, does any innovative process, this one also have the positive and the negative sides? Of course, it's begin to be more effective to communicate with consumers, to communicate with entities, to communicate with public authorities. When you have the digital tools and digital platforms, it's more effective and faster, at least. And of course, this helped the economic entities to be more innovative, to be more effective, and their growth start to be more innovative and faster. So as a result of these two parts, we have the more innovative and more effective development of countries. So digitalization, in any case, is a very, very positive process. But as I mentioned, it's bring new challenges that we should address in any case. The majority of them are new in their nature, since let's start from the competition part, because our authority are now both competition and consumer protection commissions. So we see the problem of digitalization in both spheres, but in context of competition, of course, there is a problem, let's not say problem, but risk of effect of scale and effect of scope that are familiar for us from the traditional markets, where we have the big companies with that additional efficiency because of the amount of production, but it's become more and more uh, difficult to assess and to forecast that kind of effects when we speak about digital markets. And again, when we speak about, for example, when we speak about effect of scope, so in case of digital markets, it's far easier to gain that kind of effect than, for example, when we speak about market chain, the real one, which again have that scope effect because of providing several services of several products. When we speak about digital services like, I don't know, Uber with Uber taxi, Uber delivery, etc., 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 or that kind of systems where you have all in one and it's far more comfortable for you to use, and it's create far more effect of scope for that kind of platform. But there is new, not familiar for us from the traditional markets effect, like network effect. Of course, we see network effects when we speak about, for example, telephone lines or that kind of thing from the middle of the previous century. But when we speak about taxi hailing, ride-hailing platforms, or when we speak about services like Amazon, or when we speak about services like social network, we see more effective form of that network effects, both direct and indirect. When we speak about additional utility of users, when you have some more users from your side, like a social network, when your friends are involved in, I don't know, threads, you start to use threads instead of Twitter or X or something like that. And when you have ride-hailing services and platforms, and when you have the more drivers on that service and that platforms, it becomes more useful for you as a consumer. So, and when you have that kind of effects, it's become more and more difficult to enter that kind of markets, even when you don't have such a huge financial or technical fixed costs in a preliminary part of entrance. So, and also there is a very interesting context of ecosystems when we speak about platforms, because ecosystems, when again we have the platform or app that try to make your life easier with interconnecting all your social necessary services like delivery, driving, I don't know, the shopping, like everyday shopping and that kind of things, and bring it all in one app. It creates that system, that effect of ecosystems. And again, it's very popular and emerging in context of digital markets in comparison with traditional markets. So first of all, we should firstly understand it for us as authority to clearly understand and estimate the risk in this sector, and then effectively communicate that risk with the consumers, with the entities, with the public authorities. Because first of all, when we speak about e-commerce, when we speak about electronic platforms, we have, of course, the regulator, high-tech industry ministry, or I don't know, the connection in the industry, telecom. It's different in different countries, but telecom regulator, like Renato mentioned this morning, have other vision, other mindset of the system. They see, okay, digitalization of any services are in a basement is a benefit for society, because it's shorten the costs, it makes the system more effective, etc., etc. But then comes competition authorities come and say, okay, but there is some risk that we can discuss, and again, we should very clearly understand that risk and their real effect on the economy to have that ability and that enough, let's say, vocabulary to explain the problem to system regulators. And just to mention the second part, to not take too many times for this one point, it's the consumer part. And again, as a consumer protection authority, we see huge problems, huge risks, such as personal data protection. again, it's not in a direct regulation of competition or consumer authorities, because there is personal data offices in any country, also in Armenia. But when you have that huge resource like big data without any effective regulation of personal data usage, it's create huge risk of a hyper-personalized advertisement or usage of personal data in not generated form or something like that for your specific commercial goals, purposes. And for Armenia, a very recent case for our commission is the gambling system and gambling apps with that, let's see, almost unlimited power of using of that personal data, which create a huge dependence of users to that kind of system. And we know, of course, that it's not the traditional, or let's say, system for everyday usage. It's some specific case with specific, let's say, psychological and other problems for that person who have that kind of dependence for gambling. And usage of personal data is a huge, let's say, even national risk in national security context in that case. And it's create, of course, competition and consumer risks. But for us, the main idea to find comprehensive regulation for that kind of questions, and the first step for that form of communication is to clear understanding for us the problems and risk, and clear communication with other public authorities. I think it's to save the time. It's the comprehensive form to answer from our side.
Thank you very much. So we see that this new sector brings new complexities, new challenges. Christoph, building on what Jakob said, we heard that Bundeskartellamt has a broad experience in digital sector. So I would like to hear your perspective. Do you agree with these challenges that appear in your work? How does it affect your work? And what are the challenges not only for enforcement, but also for advocacy? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think the Bundeskartellamt started quite early to do online cases. I want to share my experience with you. But first, let me thank you for the Armenian Competition Authority to organize this meeting. I'm really honored to be here and speaking to you right now, and to Hannah, of course, who's moderating this panel. Thank you. When for the Bundeskartellamt, I look back in time, like one of the first cases or series of cases we had regarding online markets was in 2013 already, and that was a phase where we maybe applied known series of harm on the digital market. For example, rebate systems for household appliances. So the problem here was that the producers, Bosch and Siemens, of household appliances incentivized to offline sales rather than online sales by granting different rebates online and offline, and therefore hindering the online competition of retailers of such products, and we prohibited it. Or like a prominent example, I guess, would also be the best price clauses in hotel booking platforms. In 2013, we prohibited HRS, a German provider, to use those clauses, and in 2015, Booking.com. And because these clauses restrict competition between hotel booking platforms. So I would say these in that time were like classic abuse of dominance strategies, but still we found it quite difficult to communicate them to consumers in the first place, but also to lawyers, to courts from time to time. Like, for example, regarding the best price clauses. We heard from consumers very often, yeah, it's quite convenient to have like a guaranteed price side, and so we can reduce search costs because we just need to check booking.com. And I mean, we ever had the feeling like in an offline market, it would be totally understandable for people that it's maybe not okay just having one shop for a desired product, but to have something like competition. And we didn't see that in online markets. Even in the rebate case, where different rebates were granted to online and offline sales, the need for equality between online and offline was just not seen by consumers, and also not, at least in the first place, I would say, by the cartel community so much. So we had the feeling that that impediment to competition that was like classical in these cases was less understood in online markets. Also, that is also maybe known to you all, we had some really tough discussions before the courts to make clear that our theories of harm are applicable, are sound and proven to be abusive. Like maybe I give an example, like narrow best price clauses. Like we had the first prohibitions in 2013. Only in 2021, the Federal Court of Justice in Germany approved that narrow best price clauses can also be abusive, and the European Court did so in 2024. So it took a long time and really a tough discussion in the field of competition law. So the situation that we experienced then, when we had these first cases, that we felt that like the traditional ways to communicate our efforts was not sufficient anymore, because what we could do is to explain like what are we doing, press releases, we publish our cases online, we go to conferences and discuss what we do. So what we could explain is, what is a theory of harm, how do we think of it, and how do we approach the problems. But suddenly there was something like we needed a broader view to make clear that digital markets have an impact on the way that these mechanisms work at all. And so for us, it was clear quite early that digitalization will profoundly change like almost all sectors in the economy, but we didn't have really a good way to deal with it and to bring awareness to consumers, to the cartel law society. And so in order to explain new market developments and to raise awareness for the problems we've been seeing there, we established an internet think tank in the year 2015. And in the first place, we took that as an internal center for expertise for analyzing digital markets. So what we did was we took some experienced case handlers, we took some colleagues from the legal department, from the chief economist team, and they discussed for like a few months what is new in digital markets, what can add to dominant positions, and we heard it before. It was like network effects. We discussed data as a competitive advantage, and also platform economics, obviously. And then we published our findings just as like a theory paper to reach out to academics, to lawyers, and to the broad public, just to bring to knowledge that these things are something that might be a problem in digital markets. And only after that, we started our Facebook case. And for us, it was like a real landmark case because the theory of harm was absolutely based on data collection by Facebook. This was not a traditional abuse of dominance theory anymore, but really a genuinely online theory of harm. And as we expected, it was also a huge fight to convince the courts that this can be an abuse of dominance. The main question we faced there was, can data collection by dominant platform constitute an antitrust issue? And also there, the higher regional court in Düsseldorf in Germany overturned our decision. So the Facebook case was in 2016. Only the Federal Court of Justice in Germany 2020 approved our decision, and so did the Court of Justice of the European Union in 2023. And besides that, we also had major debate in the cartel law community, I would say, about the question. I mean, like the abuse of dominance case, our theory of harm, was based on the terms and conditions of Facebook, who granted at that time the right that Facebook could collect data on on their companies, Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, but also on third-party websites, and look at all the data together to have like a competitive advantage when it comes to ad addressability. And this was really heavily discussed whether like a data protection topic can be the base of an abuse of dominance case. So quite a lot of people told us, yeah, you can't apply this, or you don't have the competence to say this is an abuse of dominance case because they are just collecting data. And we ever reasoned that, okay, these terms and conditions can only be set, given to the consumers because Facebook is dominant. And therefore we saw that is indeed an abuse of dominance. And in the end, the courts saw it as well.
Okay.
I should come to an end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of cases followed, like against the big platform companies, Apple, Amazon. We also just last week published a new case regarding Amazon imposing price caps on competitors. And like, to make it short, in all these cases, there's a huge effort to communicate what we are doing. Like, still now and today, we need to really describe what is a theory of harm, how can we challenge that, why is this the right approach to do so, and we not only do it to consumers, but also to lawyers, to the cartel law community, and this is some kind of permanent focus of the Bundeskartellamt today. Maybe I leave it with that.
Thank you very much. I think it was very interesting also to hear the perspective that the data protection and competition perspective, these areas become intertwined, so therefore the cooperation with different regulators is even more important now. Michele, so as Christoph mentioned, that nowadays it's even more and more difficult to communicate, even to lawyers, and to convince court, and it's a huge effort. So I would like to hear your perspective. Was it difficult for you also to communicate, to do advocacy in this sector, and what are the challenges, from your experience, especially in the area of advocacy? Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah, and I also would like to join the other speakers in thanking the Armenian Competition and Consumer Protection Agency to organize this ICN workshop. I have to say many of the things I will mention about the Italian experience have already been presented by Renato in the plenary, but I will try to here, see under a different perspective in terms of what are the critical success factors for advocacy in digital markets. Many of these factors are valid for advocacy in general, and try to report some successful, sometimes not successful example from Italy. These factors comes from, of course, reviewing all the ICN examples brought by the agencies, reviewing the contest, competition advocacy contest stories organized by the ICN and the World Bank. And one of the success factor is to build and maintain expertise. But it is not always easy to do that. Sometimes, for instance, in the Italian experience, there is no time to build internally this expertise because you need to act swiftly. You have seen the example from Portugal. They launched these studies on the electric vehicle market. While we had to, for instance, launch first investigation in a small market related to this important sector that is under development concerning data, the use of data for geolocalized electric charging stations. So we have to learn from enforcement a little bit about the market and this nascent market with some digital features. Sometimes you are not able to, you have, as I said, you don't have the full expertise to build an internal knowledge, so you have to outsource it. And this was done, for instance, in the market studies on the airline pricing, So we, didn't have the capacity to do a full analytical, economic analysis of the price distribution and dynamics, and we didn't have the also capability to do a full algorithm auditing of all the airlines. At least those interested in certain routes in Italy. So we had to externalize these services, hire a university expert to do that. Of course, some of this knowledge has been retained within the authority, but other, some part is inevitably external. And in another important point, I think was also mentioned this morning in the opening address, is it's not always, you don't have to build from scratch your expertise, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but you can leverage the knowledge created and generated by other agencies. And we've done this, for instance, at the G7 in 2024, when Italy had the presidency. We saw that a wealth of research and studies made by the G7 agencies, and we brought all this research together in policy paper, and we also committed the G7 authorities to draft this communique, this declaration, which lay out important principles about the competition risk in the AI stack. So we use this knowledge. We didn't launch our own studies because we saw already many market studies out there, and the issues are the same, the players are the same. Another important success factor is strategic prioritization. We need to pick up the right battles. And again, this is valid for all the advocacy in general, but it's important to target high impact issues. And for instance, in our case, the multidisciplinary study that we launched in 2017 on the role of big data in the economy, together with the privacy regulator and the telecom regulator, was important because it laid out a little bit a map of the risks, competition risk about the use of data. So the importance of data portability, the interoperability principles, and in some way this study paved the way to several enforcement actions. So in this case it was Advocacy towards company, if you want. And you know, one of the cases we launched is really concerning the electric mobility. You know, against it was the case Google Android Auto, where we addressed the issue of interoperability in the electric vehicle system, and we picked up this case, although it was a small case, because we saw that this sector was at a crucial stage of the development. So we wanted also to send a signal to the markets that, because of the network effects, these potential conducts could, consolidate positions very early in the development of the industry, and so we try to be forward-looking, and I think also this case, together another enforcement case, informed a subsequent advocacy towards legislators on how to be, how to legislate this new sector based on our enforcement action. And the same story, can apply also to the AI. I mentioned already the declaration at the G7 in 2024. This declaration, highlighted certain risk, potential conducts that could be really, impactful, like time bundling. And, we, as a follow-up, last year we launched this Meta AI case where we saw this risk about tying these two services. As I said, regardless of the outcome of the proceedings and the court challenges, it's just an example to see how enforcement, it's a circle, like advocacy can feed enforcement, enforcement can feed advocacy. Another important lesson is to identify windows of opportunity. Renato this morning mentioned how the competition authority was able to get new powers in advocacy. We exploited, this 5-year of national recovery and resilience plan, under which Italy pledges several reforms in exchange of funds. And one of these reforms was to adopt pro-competition regulations. But we used these window opportunities where there was a commitment by the government also to to ask for new powers, and we also we managed to obtain then also because we built a strong reputation as enforcer in digital sector, and again the links between advocacy and enforcement. Another point that was made, I think, throughout the day was the importance of evidence-based analysis, also for advocacy. The airline pricing study was based on initial hypothesis that airline companies were colluding using AI algorithms, but our analysis shows, was a deep analysis. We have commissioned 2 studies. It took, more than 1 year. Showed, after the analysis of 20 million ticket price data, that there was no algorithm collusion. And this is important because a light analysis might not have confirmed the initial narrative, which was there was some collusion, and produced some wrong recommendation. Of course, it's not it's not always easy to deal with the outcome when it's not satisfactory from a political point of view. The other, I think, important lesson for us, the new powers on market studies with remedies that we have never implemented so far, like we never concluded the study with the remedies, but they have a deterrence effect. So in the studies about school textbook, During the studies, the consultation of the initial findings, the actors already decided to change their behavior, and some of them concerning some the digital content. For instance, there were some end-user license arrangement on digital content that prevents students from downloading, printing, and transferring books, and from using this digital content in the secondary hand market and in some lending schemes adopted by schools. So basically, these arrangements on digital content prevented amounted as to a sort of a programmed obsolescence, like for the normal devices. Again, here the market actors changed their behavior before the conclusion of the study. And then already mentioned the Google Android auto case, which is important because it went up to the European Court and enabled, the declaration of certain principles, which are also informative for our, advocacy approach in the future. And the last not least is stakeholder engagement. As I said, I think Renato already mentioned this morning, it's difficult sometimes to reconcile the different cultural background of the regulators, the privacy regulators. So it's not always easy. Our study on big data took a lot of time. But just one last word on the importance of persistence adaptation. I think this is our example, of advocacy in the taxi sector. It's just an example. We've been advocating for changes for almost 30 years without no success. Nevertheless, we have used all the channels possible, like even amicus curiae in private litigations. We also used enforcement tools, both to prove that licenses numbers were too low, and quality standards as well. So, and joint opinions with the regulator and so on. And we even went up to the court, constitutional court. And here the surprise was that the court announced principles that will be very useful for advocacy later on. In terms of competition, it's not only freedom of movements or good people, but it's also freedom to innovate. So the Constitutional Court enacted this principle, which will be, useful in future advocacy. It's not useful towards legislator because there is a regulatory capture there, but I think it's an important lesson. Thank you.
Thank you. So many interesting and useful insights. I really agree that the cooperation is now important because we can leverage from each other's experience, so we don't have to build everything from the scratch. So I think this was so important point. So now that we identify the challenges and all the complexities, I think it would be useful to discuss how we can best reach out to the public. So how we can communicate our actions, but also the complexities associated to this sector. So many of us still use traditional tools, traditional approaches, but some other agencies use more innovative tools. So I would be interested in hearing your perspective. So Christoph, you already mentioned about the think tank and about all the complexities in the digital sector. So do you have any tips or views how you can best communicate these issues to the public?
Yeah, I mean, I think in recent years there was happening a lot in Germany. The think tank was something we never stopped really. So we issued an algorithms paper, for example, in 2019 that was also written in cooperation with the French Autorité de la Concurrence. So that was also something that we did quite early to try and find collaborations with other competition authorities, with other authorities. And now, currently, we look into artificial intelligence and new technologies. So we go on doing like basic work on possible new business developments and business models and new series of harm, and constantly try to discuss it with the public, with academics, and so on. Besides that, we also really still need the traditional ways to communicate, like press releases, annual reports. By the way, our annual reports will also be sent to the German Parliament to be discussed there. That is a rule in our law to do so. So we also try to bring to mind to the politics, to the Parliament, what regulations would be good, what cause problems, and so on. But also, like, our toolbox changed a bit. In 21, we had an amendment of the German Competition Act, and especially Section 19A was interesting for us. It goes directly to platform corporations, so large digital corporations, and allows us to use new interventions against gatekeepers. And we applied this new rule just the year after, in 2022, and declared several platforms to be paramount cross-market importance. Again, Google, Meta, Amazon, and Apple, and the consequences that we have like a bigger toolbox, expanded abuse control over digital ecosystems right now. This is something we are still working on, but we think that we will have better handling of like ecosystem problems then. So another thing that we quite often did in recent years was sector inquiries. In Germany, sector reports are foreseen in the law in any case when we have the feeling that competition is structurally impeded in any sector. So we looked at a lot of digital sectors like online price comparison, user reviews on the internet, smart TV ecosystems, digital advertising markets, and platform markets in online retail. And there's a reason why we use that instrument so much. One is we can communicate our our problems that we have with the sector to the companies themselves. We measure concentration rates. We look at series of harm or problems that occur structurally in the market. But also we report to the lawmaker, and sometimes it leads to new legal regulations if our series of harm are convincing to the lawmakers. And I think one of the most important things we did, we started coordinating our efforts to communicate like our strategy in digital markets. We established a policy unit on digital economy in the year 2019, and tried to have like a structured approach of communication when it comes to competition law enforcement in the digital market. And so now there's a unit really caring about speaking with one voice and like strategically looking at what topics should we address in the public. And we do it like everywhere we can, I would say. Like in conferences, in our press releases, we issue papers. We have an exchange a current exchange with academia and lawyers and judges in our working group on competition. We took part in consultations of the Digital Market Acts, or the review of the merger guidelines that is recently going on, because also in mergers we have a lot of digital topics that we need to address, like innovation and I mean, you name it. And also what we do, we try to implement new coordination between authorities in Germany. So we have a so-called digital cluster together with our Ministry of Law, our Data Protection Commissioner, the network agency. So there's a lot of agencies working together and discussing questions and try to find the right approach to tackle those questions. And maybe as a last word, so what we feel is that there's a general trend from politics, from the public debate, that competition is not acknowledged anymore, and that is even more so in digital markets. And we have the feeling that we really need to do like traditional competition advocacy, explaining people why there should be open markets and there should be competition, and that is even harder to do when it comes to complex market systems and market mechanics. And that is something that we try to do with our policy unit on digital markets.
Thank you very much. A lot of interesting initiatives that you taken up to advocate. Some of them were, I would say, more traditional, like press releases, sector inquiries. And I was wondering about more innovative tools, such as using new technologies. And Michele, what is your view? Like, do you use new technologies? And if not, then maybe why? What are the challenges? Would you like to share your perspective on this?
Yes, Anna, indeed. Only recently the authorities started using new technology to reach out the different type of audience. We are still in a very early stage. We still rely mainly on the traditional means. Also because we have identified several key challenges in using new technology. First of all is, resource constraints. You need really staff skills and an ongoing time commitment for content generator, social media management, data analytics, platform administration, moderating the content and the reaction of users. So this is a big investment. We have not yet, I think, made this also the choice of whether you want to use a proprietary system or an open source. So this is a big challenge. I've seen, from the World Bank ICN advocacy context that many agencies started with a small and then gradually scale up, also in the use of technology, maybe start targeting certain categories of potential stakeholders, and using maybe one or two social mediums, and then they grow up. Another important challenge we found that was mentioned before is the data privacy and protection, because so far we use digital technology only in one direction, to communicate, not to engage with the stakeholders. This is different. But the engagement implies the collection and the use of data, personal data released by people who use this social media interaction and so on. So again, there you have to look at the compliance with the GDPR. you have to manage all the consent requirements. You have also to look at data security and storage considerations. It's big, as you know, and we already faced with challenge internally to store the data that the authority collects for the enforcement and for the advocacy. So this is an additional layer. And as I said, so there is a tension of data collection for, maybe that is important to measure the impact of your advocacy outreach, to see how many users have seen your post or whatever. And on the other side, minimizing privacy risks. And so we have seen, I think, from the World Bank ICN context, many agencies doing these initiatives also in connection, together with the privacy regulator, because they can get the right advice. Another challenge is to measure the real impact of this engagement through this digital technology, like, measuring what is the real impact of likes, of views, shares, how they translate in compliance. It's difficult to measure. It's difficult to measure, what is the policy influence, what are the behavioral changes in consumers and firms, how to track the public awareness after your advocacy initiative, whether it is increased or not. So these are, challenging issues, and so it's difficult. Maybe you invest a lot of resources to implement certain advocacy strategy, outreach strategy, but you don't know the real impact of that. Another challenge we face is the tension between speed and accuracy in digital communication. Digital platforms operate, in real time, create pressure to respond quickly, to developments, to misinformation. But in this context, the authorities must still maintain, technical accuracy when reply to, consumers, in LinkedIn or on Facebook or whatever, in social media. But you need maybe some internal clearance on the type of language to use to maintain your credibility. And sometimes you have to also face with confidentiality problems as well. We have this problem also in the normal, traditional communication. Sometimes we also have to be careful in drafting press release, because company can challenge also this, for maybe misrepresentation, even though press releases are, maybe addressed to a wider audience. So you have to compromise a little bit the accuracy in order to be more, explicit and more communicative to the not technical audience. So these are, the challenges that we face. And I would be very, very curious to see if there are agencies using these digital technologies to engage, really engage in a two-way with the audience, with stakeholders, I don't know, using online virtual platform rooms where to discuss, to have public consultation or metaverse. I would be very curious, but, we are still very in the early days.
Yeah. We can later discuss it and share our experiences, but I know that from what I discussed with Jakob, that you use this technology somehow to support your advocacy work, so I understand that you somehow overcome these challenges, so perhaps would be useful to hear about these tools, and the floor is yours.
Yes. First of all, I want, if you let, just make one step back to make some remarks about Christoph and Michele's experience that about handling the problems, addressing the problems with the digital markets, and then go to the use of digitalization in advocacy. So, of course, it's too difficult to disagree that very, very often we have that shortage of time to react when we speak about digital markets, of course. And it's also in experience of Armenia, because in the last 4 years we have several cases in digital markets. First of all, is a booking. We have the case of booking in context of price parity, and we are now in a stage of judicial in the front of court. So the main, I think, challenge in that case is about the market definition, as we can suggest, because market definition and the understanding of a scope that you should involved in your studies is one of the most challenging questions, because every time any that kind of platform come and say, look, any form of googling or searching something like hotels or something else is included in my market because it have the same function. And in our case, we have very the booking, the representatives of booking have very wide form of fantasy to saying that from social network to any form of communication, like even a physical communication in some shops or that kind of thing where somebody offer you hotel services or something else, it's all in the same market. So it's the first part, challenging part. We also have the case of our main taxi app that also have the delivery services, and it's very huge problem with the shortage of time and to react, because we have the system when we at that moment already had the very huge taxi platform that start delivery services also via the same platform, with very specific arrangement in the first period, with using a 0% fee for him and some benefits for partners, etc., that kind of thing. But the main problem in this case is first the access to data, because when you have the platform that exclusively collect his own data, you come to problem with assessing anything, because there is no way to get that information from other authorities or like other system of sources like in traditional markets. And the second one is a very complicated interconnection between that companies and platforms and technical divisions, etc. Because it's not a local platform, it's international platform that have the headquarter in other country with some technical devices in third country and the databases in the fourth country, and all of that are interconnected between and you start to just with the point of understanding who is engaged in the infringement, and at that point you are already have the troubles. So it's about the cases, both of them we are handled in the last 4 years. For the second one, we are now, they admit their infringement, and we are now in a form of conducting compliance for having that, let's say, soft power in context of competition. So, and of course, like Christoph mentioned, the market studies, sectoral inquiries, and that kind of activities of authorities, of course, very important when you have that kind of emerging market. And we conducted 2 markets in e-commerce and the ride-hailing platforms. So again, with very close cooperation with the sector regulator, because if you don't have that kind of cooperation, you don't have, as a result, the comprehensive regulation, and you have that gaps and problems that will create some new risks and some new negative effects. So coming to the third part that I want to mention is the methodology, because as we understood that market definition, for example, or merger assessment, when you have that new emerging markets with new nature, with new risks and new problems, requires new form of understanding of your methodology. So we amend our methodology of market definition, our merger assessment methodology. We involved in our guidelines the part especially about the digital markets and about the specific procurements, of specific acquisitions, specific forms of possible infringement of digital markets. So it's all about the digital markets that we try to do. It's all about cooperation with the sector regulator and deep, very deep analysis of a new emerging markets. Coming back to the digitalization of our advocacy, it's very interesting because I want to tell you about the, I think, 3 products. First one is again it's about the cooperation, because we are in a very close cooperation with the Ministry of Finance to renovate our e-procurement system, because it's a huge proud for us. At this moment we have, I think, the majority of our procurement processes are fully digital, but we want to improve that system, adding the IE tools in an e-procurement system, also having that red flag system for anti-competitive actions and risks. It's very interesting for us and for our colleagues from Ministry of Finance, because they also see the same effects of the anti-competitive actions. And it's very interesting that they see the problems in both sides, in the anti-competitive actions of a state, when intentionally or without that, they create some problems with their technical tasks or that kind of thing. And when we see the anti-competitive actions like bid reading and that kind of things from the companies, and all of these forms are in a red flag system for the e-procurement new amendment. We are in a process, and I think in 2 years we will have that new system. Second one, which is more about advocacy, is our e-compete system that we change. The first, it's again the multifunctional story. First, it's about the effectiveness of sharing of documents and handling the cases, etc. When you have that system of sharing information between the authority employees, and to have that the faster version of communication inside of authority. The second goal is the more effective storage of data, because when you have that, let's say, traditional paper version, it's very difficult to just, for example, revise or rethink about the ancient cases from from the beginning of the century. And now we have all digitalized that data. We have all our decisions from the beginning of establishment of our commission in 2001 in a digital form. And you, by entering the keyword like petrol or something like that, have all of that basis of decisions of commission to have that genesis of commission understanding of such sector. And the third one that I want to mention is fully about advocacy. It's that we have incorporated system of price representation for consumers via our system. How it works? So in our website, you can find the price monitoring system, and this price monitoring system fully automatic, and it's linked with our state revenue committee database. How it works? When somebody entered the shop and, I don't know, purchased a butter, the state revenue committee print the tax check, and the information from that check automatically go to our system and create new data for showing it on our website. So, for example, when you enter some specific market chain and say, oh, there is some high price of butter, you can just at that minute open our website and see the price in all market chains in Armenia for a specific even product name. For example, some specific firm butter in, for example, or 4 or 5 market chains for at least the previous day, to understand that, for example, it's a problem only in that market chain, or it's the, let's say, general problem in a sphere. And if there is a, let's say, some sufficient change in some huge change in price, it's of course understandable, and it's of course we start some processes inside of our commission, because we have the same monitoring system. We see the same price, let's say. So it's firstly it's make some more clear situation for our consumers, because they start to understand the pricing system. They start to understand that there is a different prices in different markets, and they don't. The first thought of our consumers not about that they all want to steal our monies, in case of, for example, market chains. It's about the one part. And I will just very briefly want to also mention our consumer part, some digital tools, because from the 2025 we become the Consumer Protection Commission also. And that new powers bring new responsibilities, and we understand at the first moment that it will be the flow of complaints from the consumers in any form. Let's say when you have some personal problem, you will write to Commission because you know that the Commission are the Consumer Protection Authority. So what we do, what was our solution of this situation? We create new system that called consumer assistant. It have this three-stage system. The first one, when you entered and sign in a consumer assistant, you wrote in a very open, very free form your complaint. You just mention with what exact economic entity that you have problem with. For example, with some specific market chain, I go and that's something there. We firstly send that complaint to that economic entity and say, okay, see, we know about that problem. You have 14 days for solving that problem, and we don't start any form of investigation, intervention, etc. And it's very, very interesting that almost 60–70% of a problem solved on this level. So because it's very little problem, nobody, like economic entities, don't want to come and engage in some process of like commission like us, just because of there is some problem of 2,000 drams with some battery in some market. And they solve that problem very, very effectively on that level.
We have to slowly.
Yes, and I will try to just two words about those two stages. The second one is about NGOs. We involve the NGOs of our countries in this system because we say, okay, the second level, NGOs try to solve that problem. You can go to the court, you can start name and shame processes, do anything that you can do. And again, if they can solve it on that level, authority don't involved in resource demanded processes for investigation, etc. And only on the third stage we start our processes when there is a problem that continue to be. From first side, it's very effective advocacy and very effective tool to solve the complaints of consumers in very, very fast way. And the second, it's not it's equally important that it's a very effective way of data collection. In which sector you have complaints, in which sector you have problem of consumers, and that can be the baseline, the basis for your further market studies, for your further new intervention in such market, or more, maybe even proposals, advice for regulation, change of regulation in that sector.
Thank you very much. We are a bit over time. We should end now, but I would also like to open the floor for any questions. It's the last session, so I think we can be 10 minutes late. Are there any questions or comments from the public? Yes. Yes, please.
Please.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Victor. I'm from CADE, the authority in Brazil. My question is a little bit related also with the first plenary. Between the relation between digital markets and the traditional markets, specifically the physical markets. Last year, Brazil, we faced there two mergers operations that we couldn't define the separation between the physical relevant market to the digital one. In another saying, we could imagine just one big market with physical and digital. For us, it was a little bit vanguardist. So my question is, have you ever faced something like that? And if not, but you have an answer, how you could see this relation between both? So it would be possible to do this, put these two definitions together, or you would think, no, this is impossible because, I don't know, in my country there is this rule?
I can start from it's a very interesting question about the physical and digital markets and the definitions, because I suggest 1 year ago we discussed it with our US colleagues, and we come to conclusion that in general we have the same traditional thinking, the baseline of competition regulation, because we have the same idea in a basement for all markets. We have the same, let's say, market power, that somebody wants to make more profit in a form of price discrimination or something like that. I don't know, anything, because it's all about the, let's say, economic theory, when economic entity wants to grab the part of a consumer's benefit from the market. But when we come to some, let's say, some specific moments, the main problem that I described in the first my answer, yes, that there is some new forms that digital market can use for grabbing that part of benefit of a consumer. Again, idea in a basement is the same, but I, at this moment, don't think that we can, that the Armenia, for example, in this legislation, at this moment, don't have some specific provisions about digital markets in consumer competition regulation, because we think that our regulation in a current form are enough comprehensive for making any form of intervention in that market also. But I think the solution of problem of any misunderstanding or maybe gap in regulation on the level of methodology, when we change the form of understanding of such specific definitions or terms in our legislation, so we can keep the physical and digital market regulation in the same on the low level and change only the methodology, the method of understanding of a sphere, and maybe it will be enough. But of course we think about DMA, we think about the specific forms of digital regulation. But at this moment, for me, as a authority representative, the law is comprehensive enough in a traditional form of definitions. We just should change our method of thinking about the problem.
Maybe one last question or two questions. Maciek, please.
Okay, thank you. My name is Maciej. I'm from Polish Office of Competition and Consumer Protection, and I would like to ask Jakob about this system of price monitoring. I'm very curious about it. I definitely must to see it on your website, but I want to ask: is it you told about example of butter? Is it only a food product, or is it or in every shop in Armenia, let's say in somewhere in the country as well? Is it average price of this product from the whole country? How it works?
Okay, my colleagues, yes, Commissioner Petrosen also here.
Maybe
we can
discuss maybe
it later, or you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, we can discuss it later, because all of our colleagues in the price monitoring department all are here.
Renato, you had a question?
Can I be very critical and very provocative? Because sometimes I have the feeling that we love to tell each other that everything goes very smoothly and we are doing the best things. Two considerations. First, we heard this morning about research that showed that over the last 25 years, there was a huge consolidation and increasing markups. So I guess we failed to see something arriving, no? Now, if you go back in 2000, and I was already old at the time, so I remember it very well, the digital platforms were the white knights that were finally disrupting well-established market, challenging incumbents, long-lasting incumbents. So for a long time, the narrative was welcome digital platforms. We want to support. Competition was supportive to digital platforms. And Christoph mentioned the decision by the Bundeskartellamt in 2016 about Facebook. And it was an incredible decision because they argued that there was an abuse of dominant position based on data collection. People thought, I thought, but are they crazy? It's not an economic abuse. It's about that data collection. And they had really a forward-looking approach. Imagine that just 2 years earlier, in 2014, there was the famous EU merger clearance about Facebook, WhatsApp, where, how can I put it diplomatically, the European Commission failed to fully grasp the competition implication of these transactions. So my question today is, what are we missing now that we will regret in, not in 25 years this time, in 5 years? So is there something that we are really failing to understand? What should we focus on? Second critical remark, I'm very skeptical about AI detection tools. I know it's very trendy. Everyone talks about these AI detection tools, bid rigging, all kinds of particularly bid rigging. It's not only Armenia. There are a lot of projects everywhere. My consideration is we are facing specialists, so people who systematically bid in tenders. There are specialists, AI specialists that will work for them, and it will be very easy to do reverse engineering and to basically neutralize any system we might conceive. So the end result will be that we will rely heavily on this. We will find very negligible, ridiculous cartels, and we will miss the real issues. That's my very negative, sorry for horizon scanning.
I would rather finish it with a positive remark, but I'm sorry that we have to close this session. Okay, good. One last round, and
maybe I can say something to your first question. What is missing, or what do we miss? Because that is something we really intensely discuss. We are overwhelmed by the speed of business models coming up and changing again, and I guess we are really struggling with keeping up with what is happening in online markets, and that's going to be worse in AI markets. That's what we fear and what we already see. And so we are really struggling with the whole approach of competition law enforcement on product markets or online markets that really turn so fast. That's what we're missing, I fear.
No, just to conclude on a positive note, also about no, but also about at least the use of AI for improving internal processes within the agency. We will see in this year edition of the contest a really nice story from Guatemala. It's a very new agency. The law was established, but the head of the agency was not nominated. So until the nomination of the head, the agency was not operational. They didn't have budget. But they were very good in using AI tools to build up a provisional website where they put the law, where they engage already with the stakeholder. We announced the public that they existed, and they basically rejected the linear bureaucratic model where you have first the budget and then you procure the service and then you do a launch. Using free AI tools, they were enabled to already get started even before the formal, approval of the funding of the agency. I think this is a nice story to see how the AI can be used.
For case handling, I think AI is very, very fruitful and very helpful. Not sure for the question.
I think further question we can address on the dinner, which is in like at 7, I think, right? So thank you very much. It was very insightful, and see you soon.